What is going on, Bills fans? I am Lance Nelson, and welcome to Triple Coverage. To my right is Mr. Benjamin Shoop, and to my left is Scott Casson. Gentlemen, welcome back. A little day off last week for the both of you. Ben rock and rolling, and Scott doing some celebrating still of summer. So great to have y'all back. And saw some interesting NFL power rankings to start with here. Um, the Bills were 10th overall in power rankings behind Green Bay. This, Jordan Love Green Bay Packers team getting a lot of love, and Bills still in the top 10. What do you think about the FanDuel NFL power rankings?
Yeah, you try not to get too worked up about power rankings that we see before any downs have been taken or snaps have been taken or any training camp has really happened. But I think in the eyes of the national media, the Bills got worse. That may not be true. Could be some addition by subtraction at some positions, but we lost a lot of household names that people in the national media look for. Diggs, Hoyer, Hyde, Gabe Davis, guys who we all think and know are replaceable with what they have. But, in the eyes of the national media, those names are what kind of move the needle. So I'm not surprised that the Bills are a little bit lower than we're used to seeing them in power rankings. But, all that really matters is when they take the field, and we'll see how they rank in the standings at the end of the season. But, yeah, I had a feeling there's going to be quite a few more coming that, make us a little bit mad as well.
Yeah, I mean, like Scott kind of said, you kind of expect a little bit of a drop with at least national media. You have a lot of bigger names, players leaving the Bills, not more question marks, and while Bills fans still are very optimistic, there is the chance that they do fall a little bit to like 10-9, at least when it comes to the regular season. So there's just those questions that you still don't know the answers to. You don't know how Curtis Samuel is going to come in. You don't know how Joe Brady's offense is going to work. The defense with brand new safeties coming in, like besides Rapp, but you just have different kind of roster coming into the building this year. But I still think that a lot of the national media, even though they're going to put them lower, they're going to admit that, hey, we could be very wrong by the end of the year. They could be top 5 easily in the NFL. They still have Josh Allen, but I think as the overall team, it's a little tough to say with these question marks. Yes, they're going to be top 5, right? Where past years, you knew which type of Bills team you were getting. You knew the players. You knew that they fit the scheme. That they knew they understood the scheme. So it's going to be a little bit like that for the first few weeks, even if they do beat the Cardinals and the Dolphins and the Jags the first 3 weeks, which we'll get into a little bit later. Even if they do win those games, I still think people will say, well, it's early in the season. Let's see how long they can keep this going before we start putting them, up there with Kansas City and everything. And then when you alluded to the Packers, that is one team that they're kind of like the Bills a couple of years ago with me. Jordan Love, lofty expectations now. Jordan Love's, expected to be that guy. So, you're seeing some teams kind of take the Bills route now and be that team that are going to be hyped up, and the Bills kind of be the teams that this year that people are like, okay, we're not really that high on. So it's going to be, power rankings are power rankings. At the end of the day, they're fun to look at, but at the end of the day, they're not too much thought into them.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about the position that they have the Bills in either necessarily. 10th is fine by me right now, but it's just interesting to look at the teams they had ahead of them, with the Jets being 6th overall, the Cowboys at 7, and then the Packers at 9. Those would be the 3 that I'm looking at like, oh my God, that's a little bit high for having the scenarios they're in. And all good. Like that's how someone sees it. Interesting that Miami's at 14 and they have Houston ahead of Miami. And if they were going to put an AFC East ahead of Buffalo, AFC East team ahead of Buffalo, I would have expected that to be the Dolphins, not the Jets. But here this is their, you know, this is their ranking, obviously, and I think that it's just interesting to see how it unfolds through the lens of other people and who they have where. Not necessarily, like I said, that the Bills are 10th, but that the Jets, Cowboys, and Packers are ahead of them while the Dolphins are 4 spots behind them. So I think that was more what I was looking for. But yeah, Scott, what else you got, brother? And again, welcome back. How's things going?
It was good. I'm back from my Summer of Scott World Tour. First time I've been in my own house in like 3 weeks, so feels good. Feels good to be back. Appreciate it. Missed you boys last week. But yeah, and other stuff, this is maybe the deadest week in sports. Obviously, we got the Open Championship going on at 3 a.m. if anybody wants to watch that. But this is the week when all of the lists come out. ESPN every year does their top 10 by position that executives vote on. The Bills had a couple guys on there, but our boy Josh Allen came in number 3 as the top-ranked quarterback in the NFL, behind Mahomes, which I think, we can all live with. But then number 2 was Joe Burrow, and then 3, Josh. I think that probably went either way for a lot of people, but there's some interesting quotes. So an anonymous executive, show yourself, coward, but came out and said that he thought Josh Allen was a bit overrated, which I think to people who watch him play on a consistent basis is just kind of absurd. So what do you guys think about him being number 3 behind Burrow and Mahomes? And what do you guys think about, the overrated quote that someone took at him?
Yeah, you're seeing this kind of trend of either calling Josh Allen underrated or overrated. It's you're on one side or the other. It's back and forth. You've seen, Nick Wright say one thing. You've seen I think Carlton say the other, and just people going back and forth saying this, that about Josh Allen. And it kind of is to the point where I do think he does get a lot more slander than most NFL quarterbacks. And people like to see Josh Allen not necessarily fail, but just struggle at times, and they like to see that, hey, this guy isn't top 3 in the league at all times, and he does make mistakes. When overall, when you look at his game, he is one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL, top 3, in my opinion, easily. Most Bills fans, I think, put him at 2 there, right behind Mahomes. But it's something that it'll always be a conversation until he wins a ring, right? It's going to be, can he win the ring? Can he get them there? And that's been the big question. And a lot of fans will use that against him that aren't Bills fans and say, well, he hasn't been able to win and hasn't been able to get to the Super Bowl. When in reality, when you look at the games that he's lost and what's happened with Josh Allen's career, a lot of it hasn't been on him, especially in the playoffs. I know maybe against the Bengals, that was a rough game, but a lot of the other playoff games, he had phenomenal performances and was let down elsewhere. So it's always going to be a big conversation of if he's overrated, underrated. I think if anybody says that he's overrated, then, I'll question where they're looking. Underrated, I definitely could agree with. But I think the overall consensus is he's a top 3 quarterback in the NFL, at worst top 5 for most people. So I think he's around where he should be. I think he's top 3, and I think most people have him there at top 3. At least most people that watch and analyze the game at a high level have him there at top 3.
Yeah, he's always going to be my 1B kind of to Mahomes. I think that the talent, the physical ability, let's say that, not even the talent, the physical ability is really unmatched by anybody else in the league. You have Lamar Jackson, who could be the better runner overall, but has no way, shape, or form of touching Josh Allen when it comes to passing. Then you have Patrick Mahomes, who has the passing side of it down and really just mastering an offense, the mental, that IQ, that just overall mental aspect of the game. He's got a mastery on that, which puts him ahead of the game. And Josh Allen, when you talk about just physical ability, is just the best in the league. He can do it all, run, pass, whichever, and second in the league in big time throw rate per PFF, with quarterbacks with at least 300 dropbacks, and was 3rd in the league in total dropbacks last year. I think it's going to be interesting to see how that number changes this year, if he's that high up on the list of total, dropbacks, with the way they may attack this schedule this year, which is what we're going to get into here in a little bit. But Ben, tell us a little bit about how you're doing. How are the Chili Peppers, and then what else currently do you want to just throw in there?
Yeah, it was a busy weekend last week. I went to the Red Hot Chili Peppers concert. If anybody went there, it was last week. Again, it was a phenomenal live. Highly suggest if anybody is even a slight fan of them to go see them live. And then we had the Stevie Johnson tournament last week that I went to a little bit. Couldn't stay as long as I wanted, but me and Kevin were there, so it was fun going there. But glad to be back. And it's getting to that time where Scott had mentioned that it might be the most dead week in sports this week, but next week is when the NFL really starts rolling, right? You got the training camp coming up in about 5 days. Next Wednesday is the first day for the Bills, so they'll be there up at St. John Fisher, 9:45 bright and early on Wednesday on the 24th, and then it gets rolling. It just goes right into it. I know personally I'll only be there on the 4th as of now, August 4th, that Sunday, which is an 11:45 one. So if you're there and you see me, say what's up. I think Lance, you're going to be at that one as well with me. So if you see us, just give us a little go Bills and, go Bilton Buffalo, anything like that. But yeah, it's going to be a good one. It's always fun to go to these camp practices, right? It's just the excitement and just seeing what these guys can do now in the blue, red, white, and blue in the Bills uniform there. So it's going to be exciting. What do you guys think of a training camp getting rolling here? And it seems like not too long ago we were talking about how it's so far away, and now it's right here. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm really interested to see some of those arrival videos. Those are some of the most fun. Tuesday we'll get some arrival videos and things like that. So I'm excited to kind of see how those guys they like to have fun with some of the acclimation stuff and how they get settled in their rooms and all that kind of stuff. And I think we talked about it a little bit on our spaces that we're doing on Built in Buffalo on Tuesday nights on our X page. If anybody's available that's listening and come tune into the X page on Tuesdays for some spaces. But we were mentioning that the kids, the rookies that are coming in, kind of aren't far removed from this. Would be a little bit earlier, but the time they'd go back and kind of get into their dorms as well. So that's kind of fun for those guys, kind of getting back to a dorm room so soon. It'll be some of the last time. This will be sort of the first summer that they have their new routine and new things. So it'll be exciting to see how those guys kind of get in and get acclimated.
Yeah, it's fun to see, like you mentioned, the entrance videos, like some of the stuff that guys bring. Like there's guys bringing TVs and PlayStations, and like last year, 2 years ago, everybody mailed Von Miller toilet paper. Like it's just kind of funny. These guys are making however much money, but they have to go stay in like the freshman dorms at St. John Fisher. But yeah, camp's always a really exciting time. Kind of, the season's right around the corner. We got the Hall of Fame game on August 1st. Like that's less than 2 weeks away. Like it's kind of crazy how fast July's flying by. So excited to see the boys out there in the field and see some of these position battles start to take shape, because there's a lot of spots on the roster kind of up for grabs this year, and a lot of young guys that can kind of carve out their area on the team. So it'll be cool to see who can step up and kind of replace some of those guys we were talking about earlier who are gone.
Scott, you mentioned the Bills, some of them bring like their Xbox and everything. I'm wondering if we'll see some little NCAA action between some of the players and their alums there, going back and forth with some of the rivalries that might be inside the locker room there and inside the dorm room. So excited to see if we get any good little videos there from inside the dorm rooms with some rivalries.
Yeah, it'll be exciting for sure. All right. Let's see here. Let's get into the topics we have planned, and I hope you guys enjoy this a little bit. This is going to be a series. We're going to try to do three games per show for the next few shows now, and kind of give a little preview into what this upcoming season could be like. And it's going to change as the preseason and training camp time rolls on. We'll still be doing some previews, and some of the topics are going to change because we'll have more information. We'll have more eyes on the players, and we'll have maybe some injuries pop up and some different things, players maybe on the move, different things like that throughout camp surprise cuts or whatnot. We'll see. So all that stuff can kind of change, but we're going to start here at week 1 and kind of go through the schedule over the next 5 to 6 shows and really try to break down we see based upon mostly last year's performances and then what the teams have in store this year. So the first game, week 1, obviously is going to be the Arizona Cardinals. So I guess I'll start with Scott here. And first thing is, Kyler Murray, right? When you think of Arizona, he's the QB. And what do you think? Played only 8 games last year. So what do you kind of think of what to maybe expect from Kyler in 2024?
Yeah, like you mentioned, he missed the first half of last year coming off of a torn ACL. Something we as Bills fans have seen the past couple of years with, Trey White and then Von Miller. That first year when they're back for the half year, they're not quite 100%, especially a guy like Kyler Murray who runs around so much. So be interesting to see how much better he looks coming off of a full normal offseason of normal workouts. He doesn't have to think about the knee anymore. So he's just such a dynamic playmaker. With his arm and then especially with his legs, that he's going to give our defensive line a pretty tough task right off the bat in week 1, with which some of the guys are going to be going up against later in the season is definitely going to be a big deal, getting that test early. So, and then they have, new revamped receiving core, a couple big draft picks coming in, like we'll touch on later, Marvin Harrison Jr., another team that can run the ball well. Obviously, Murray helps out with that using his legs. But, yeah, super dynamic playmaker that they're going to have to figure out early in week 1. To hopefully start off the season on a good note.
Yeah, Kyler Murray's always been, another one of those players that people go back and forth on. Is what really is his ceiling in the NFL. He's undersized at the position. We've seen undersized quarterbacks be able to succeed in the league, and we've also seen them struggle mightily. So it's always been a question mark with Kyler Murray coming off the injury too. It was a pretty big injury there. But I mean, like Scott said, they got a kind of a revamped, little bit of a revamped offense from last year. It will be, I think, a lot better than what you saw. James Conner, we all know he can run the ball very well. Marvin Harrison Jr., again, who we'll touch on in a second, who's coming in, and a lot of people said that he was a surefire. He's going to be a Hall of Famer one day, and we all know what his dad did in the league, and now he's coming in and with almost higher expectations than his dad. And then, they bring in Zay Jones, Michael Wilson there to help him out, who was my draft crush last year, Michael Wilson. And then, Trey McBride also is there to help him, who is a rising star kind of at the tight end position. High expectations for him as well, kind of like Kincaid coming into this year. So I'm excited to see Kyler Murray, just see if he can put it together with this offense. Hopefully, if he does, it's not week 1, it's after week 1, and he can figure out what he did wrong against the Bills and then start putting it together. But it's going to be fun to see him. He's an exciting player, right? We've seen him have plays where he's running all around and making guys miss and then somehow find somebody in the back of the end zone. So, while he's had kind of an up and down start to his career, it's been still an exciting one. He's an exciting player to watch.
Yeah, for sure. I had a note here, his average time to throw at 2.8 seconds in 8 games, 19th in the NFL. I expect that to try to change with the way they've got their offense now. Mentioned Zay Jones comes in, Michael Wilson's there, Marvelous Marv is coming in there, and I think that, or was it Maserati? What the hell? I don't even know. Like,
Maserati Marv, yeah.
I hate that. I hate that sound so much in my head. I just, oh my God.
Gus Johnson special.
So in week 17, when they beat the Eagles, Murray had a 2.31 seconds time to throw with a NFL rating of 116.8. So by far his finest performance of the season. And I think that's going to be important from him. Some of the quarterbacks obviously are prone to holding onto the ball, like Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, and Kyler Murray tends to get in that as he tries to make things happen with his legs. And I think that may be maybe a benefit of adding some of these offensive players. And we'll talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. and what he can mean to this offense, not only down the field threat, right? You can probably put the ball in his hands at the line of scrimmage and let him make some plays. So how big of an addition do you think the fourth overall pick and the rookie Marvin Harrison Jr. is really going to be for this offense? Let's talk about week one, because that's what we're talking about. So how much of a focal point and how big of an impact on week one do you think Marvin Harrison Jr. has?
Yeah, I mean it's going to be, especially for the Bills, it's, you know, you're going in with a guy who you haven't seen in the NFL yet. And then on the Bills side of things, you have, you know, Christian Benford, Rasul Douglas still there, Teron Johnson. So you still have your top 3 corners that you ended last year with. And then safety wise, that's where it starts to kind of get, you know, question marks. Can they keep Marvin Harrison contained deep? Can they stick with him and be able to just minimize his impact on this game? It's going to come down to, I think, Taylor Rapp, Mike Edwards, Cole Bishop, the secondary in the deep end there, to really contain him, because, you know, with a guy that has the skill like Marvin Harrison Jr. And, you know, I know we said that he hasn't played an NFL game yet, but just when you look at his tape and you look at him coming out of college, he is one of the most refined receivers coming out of the draft in a long time. So you already know that you're going to have your hands full, even though he is a receiver. And it's this secondary is similar but different at the same time. The corners, like I said, are the same. So you're gonna lean on these safeties to really kind of keep an eye on him, and it's going to be a big question. I'm curious to see if they shade him a little bit, because, you know, he is the big name, but will that leave things open then for Michael Wilson? Will it leave things open for Zay Jones, Trey McBride? That's the big question mark. Do you take that risk with a guy that you haven't seen in the NFL? Do you take that risk of saying, hey, we're going to really put a lot of attention on this guy just because we know what he can do, even though we haven't seen it yet? And we're going to take a gamble and say, hey, we're not going to let the rookie beat us. We're going to let everybody else beat us if they are going to beat us. So that's really the thing I'm curious to see, is how they attack him. If they do have, you know, Rasul Douglas kind of follow him around all game, or do they have Christian Benford on him all game, or do they mix it up? So it's going to be a big question mark, I think, to see how they attack him, and see if they really do put that emphasis on shutting him down in his rookie debut.
Yeah, obviously rookie receivers, there's always some kind of a welcome to the NFL, period, although guys like Justin Jefferson seem to fit in right away. Just kind of wonder like where Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be. And he's not the kind of guy that like wowed you at the combine. No, he ran like a 4.46, I think, which is fast, but it's not the fastest guy in the world. Like all of his like athletic measurements they're good, but he's not like jump off the page. He's just a great, you know, tactical receiver. He runs his routes really well. He knows where to be. He's quarterback friendly. So I think that's the kind of guy that will translate to the NFL relatively well, because he's not just necessarily relying on being the most athletic guy on the field, like in some guys in college, where you get to the NFL and guess what? Everybody's as athletic as you. Marvin Harrison, you know, probably learning from watching his dad, who's a Hall of Fame level receiver his whole life, plays the position really well. So yeah, like you said, it will be interesting to see what they do with him. And also if they throw him out there as the number 1 receiver right away, they probably will. You know, they don't have tons of other weapons of that caliber. But yeah, it'll be fun to watch. You know, it'll be fun to say, you know, I believe the 3 of us will be at the game, that if he ends up having a big career, that, you know, we were at Marvin Harrison Jr.'s debut game. So yeah, it'll be really, really interesting and kind of fun to watch kind of what both teams do with him. Like how much do they use this kid in his first NFL game? And then one other stat I had about the Cardinals, just I forgot to say it before, but they only won 4 games last year. They're 4-13, but 3 of those 4 wins were against playoff teams. So they tended to be pesky and play good teams well. And especially in week 1, when you have a month to prepare for an opponent, you know, I think this game could end up being closer than maybe we think, just because, you know, they were pesky to some good teams last year. I don't know if you guys have watched that receiver documentary on Netflix yet, but in one of the last episodes, the Niners are celebrating because the Cardinals beat the Eagles. So they're definitely a team that can surprise some people, especially this year with Marvin Harrison Jr., a healthy Kyler Murray, you know, Bill's great Zay Jones, and, a team that, you know, maybe shouldn't overlook in week 1.
Yeah, I think they're going to feature him early and often. I think that's what they drafted him for. I think when you draft a guy like that who arguably was the best player rated in the entire draft, that you kind of are going to start leaning on him as your top weapon almost immediately. And knowing that Kyler Murray has more success in that quick passing game and that he's able to be utilized in that sense to keep pressure off, I think that's gonna be something that they're gonna try to do. I would say probably 10 to 14 targets in week one, for Marvin Harrison Jr. And we'll see how that all plays out. I expect the Bills to be ahead and for them to pass a lot anyway, so that may drive that as well. Just go in a couple of strengths and weaknesses types of conversations here. We don't necessarily need to go too long on this stuff because we've got a lot to get to in the show, but just worth noting that the one big strength of Arizona is running the football. Fourth in the NFL last year at 139.1 yards per game, 5 yards per attempt, second in the NFL. Scored 17 rushing touchdowns. That's ninth in the NFL. So James Conner had 1,000-yard season. We know he's a big physical running back. DeMarcado showed some promise here and there. I think I remember trying to get him off the waiver wire to boost my running back stable in fantasy at one point. That didn't really work out for me. And then they just signed Trey Benson, so we'll see how he's able to add to that. But also a healthy Kyler Murray can obviously help in that run game as well with his scramble ability. So I think that's their big strength, and we'll see how much the passing game kind of takes off and if that can, help them with their weaknesses, which again are, scoring offense, passing yards per game were 26th. And then we'll get into a couple of other weaknesses, but on offense, they're, top 10 in the league in a lot of rushing categories, and then bottom in points per game and passing offense. So any mention about what their strength is there, and if you want to start on some of the weaknesses as well as you go through your assessment there.
Yeah, this team definitely was a team, at least in the beginning of the year, that ran the ball often, kind of threw it a little bit more when Kyler Murray came back, just as that makes sense. Like they had Josh Dobbs playing the first half of the season, and who didn't he play for last year? So, but yeah, definitely want to run the ball. James Conner is a stud. They have a pretty solid offensive line, so they're going to look to probably establish the run early. And then, Kyler Murray with his legs is always something you got to look out for. And then as far as weaknesses go, they could not stop the run at all. I think they were dead last in run defense last season. And for the way we think the Bills are going to want to play this year, featuring a lot of James Cook, expect James Cook to have a big game in week one because the Bills are going to want to get him involved early and often and get him a lot of carries. And then, maybe Ray Davis gets some touches, kind of get his feet wet in his first game. And then we know Josh Allen could run. So it could be a battle of teams trying to establish the run. Which if you're a real football fan, a fan of the Big Ten, follow college football, we're talking about the video game, kind of a Big Ten style football game with a lot of running the ball on both sides.
Wisconsin versus Nebraska type game there.
Yeah, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, the way football is meant to be played.
Just realized I was muted, but yeah, I mean, it could be a quick game. And thinking about it, right? If you have both teams running the ball very well, clock ticking, could be one of those games where it comes down to who can execute in the red zone the best, who can execute once it starts getting down there. And both of these teams, once you get down inside the 10, inside the 5, they can finish, right? They both can get the ball in the end zone. They can punch it in there. So it's going to be a little test there for the Bills to see how their run defense can kind of live up to, if they can be a top tier run defense or if they're going to struggle this year. It will be a tough test early. Obviously, one game, even if they do struggle against the Cardinals, isn't going to be the end all be all long season. But, it's a good test early on just to have Daquan Jones back, to see how Dwayne Carter plays the run at Oliver, see how those guys really in the middle can play, see how Matt Milano is week one with his leg and see how he can play against the run. So I think it's going to be a really good test for this Bills, front four and just linebacking corps. So it's going to be a good test for them. And then, yeah, the Bills, I think, you got to get that run game going early, even if you're struggling early. Like Scott said, they were dead last at 143 yards per game last year. Excuse me. So it's you really just have to stay with it, because eventually either you'll break a long one or you'll just wear and tear them down, where you're getting 5-5-5 late in the second half, late in the third and fourth quarter. So I think you got to stick with the run game for the Bills, but it's going to be a really good test for this run defense early on in the season.
Yeah, I agree. Weaknesses, the run defense of the Cardinals is last. I think you said that. So Bills should have some ability to move the ball and kind of score at will, I would expect, in this game. Kind of, I'm not sure if it's going to be a Dallas Cowboys of last year type of game where they just run all over them in that respect, but we'll see how that works out. And yeah, Ben, you kind of asked this question, so if you will, I'll let you kind of lead this portion of what your question would be when it comes to week one against the Cardinals.
Yeah, so I mean, we all know week one isn't the end all be all, right? There's a lot of things that can happen. A couple years ago, the Bills dropped the game to Pittsburgh. A lot of people were worried early on. The Cardinals, very, very bad team last year. Really, like one of the worst in the NFL, as everybody knew. So if they do lose this game, there will be a little bit of panic, but it's really just how much on a really kind of, you can scale it on 1 to 10 if you want. You can but how much really would it panic you? For me personally, it kind of, I think, depends on how they lose for me. If they get blown out of the water, then I'll be, more towards that 7-8 kind of range of panicking. But either way, I'm not going to be a full 10 after this game. I'm going to be very, at the end of the day, it is week one, and I think I'll personally be one of those in-betweeners if they do lose, and to look at the bad, look at the good. Let's fix the bad. Let's improve on the good. But I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on kind of what your thoughts would be if they did lose this week one game to the Cardinals.
I have full expectations that they do not lose, but I think after being heartbroken, just from it's going to be a long day, week one, and being there, and I expect it to be hotter. So there's going to be disappointment, but by the time I get home and really turn on the tape again and whatnot, I'll probably find some things. I don't expect this team to just start week one and score 40 points a game and just come out. It's going to take time. They're going to have to get used to not having Stephon Diggs. I think they're going to have to get used to some things, and I expect the preseason to help. But I mean, week one, I still expect, like I said, a win there. But if they do lose, I mean, look, if it's 40-0 and they're just not competitive, that's one thing. But outside of that, if it's a competitive game and things just didn't go our way one way or the other, it's early season things. Again, one that if you're having those aspirations of higher seeds in the playoffs and things, I think this is one you point to having to have, but I'm not going to go more than a 5 on a panic scale of 1 to 10, regardless of this outcome.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't be super pumped if they lost. Like you mentioned, this is one of those ones that they have to have. Their schedule is tough this season. There's no question about that. So games against teams like the Cardinals are ones that you need, because it may be tough to pick up wins later in the year. Last year going 6-6 and then rattling off wins against the Chiefs, the Cowboys, the Dolphins, teams that were all playoff teams. I don't know if you can rely on that every year. So getting a win in week one against an inferior opponent at home seems like one that they should win. I don't know if I would panic if they lost, because, a team hasn't lost week one and then won the Super Bowl in a while, have they? Oh, yeah, the Chiefs did it literally last year. So long season, but yeah, definitely a game that, may not seem like it matters a bunch in the moment if they lose, but we could look back come December, January and be like, damn, if we had that Cardinals game back, things could be a lot different. So, yeah, one that I hope and expect that they win, but if they do lose, maybe not a lot of panic in the moment, but as you get further down the season, that could be one that you kind of look back on, like the one that got away. I think you're muted, but I read your lips and you asked what my prediction was.
Yes. Very good.
So yeah, the initial line right now is the Bills by 6.5 and over under of 48. I think the Bills are going to win, and I think they're going to cover. just know a home opener, there's going to be a lot of excitement. I think Josh Allen's going to come out with a chip on his shoulder. He's seeing all this stuff out there about him being overrated, blah, blah, blah. And he has a great opportunity to prove with what a lot of people in the media are also saying is not the best roster, to kind of go on like kind of an FU tour and show that, hey, I'm not overrated. Like, I'm bringing all these guys with me and we're going to have a good season. So I think the Bills win. I think they cover. Also kind of like that under 48 number. Obviously, we're a month and a half away, but like we talked about, could be a lot of running the ball, could be a quick game. Maybe there's not enough time on the clock to reach that over.
Yeah, I think, I think it'll be a tough game when it comes to the over/under. But yeah, when you're talking about the line there, I do think they cover there, and I do think my prediction, I guess, I'm thinking like a 31-17 game. I don't think the defense will entirely shut down this Cardinals offense. They could get to 20 plus, but I would probably say more in that 17 range. They are younger offense, still trying to figure it out. The Bills, I think, even if they do get off to a slow start, they'll find their groove in the second half. So I think my prediction, I guess, is just 31-17 is the official score that I think I might go with. But I do think the Bills come out and handily win it without really any scare there.
You'll have to definitely tune in to the show on the Friday prior to the game for my official score prediction. But for now, smashing that over, honestly. So I know, Scott, you want to take the under there, but like Arizona's only going to have to score 10 points to get the over in my prediction. So I think the Bills win comfortably by 2 touchdowns at least. But I do think the defenses on both sides are going to struggle. So I do think some points are going to be put up there. And I think the ability for the Bills to run the football and Arizona to run the football, I just think that you could look at here having a high scoring game. So I think that, again, I'm smashing that over. Was it 48.5, you said? And then also on the spread, I'll tick up the Bills to probably plus 10.5 or minus 10.5 and bet that if I had to. So going with a double-digit win and definitely the over. So any predictions out there? By all means, we're gonna do similar things for the Miami game and the Jacksonville game coming up weeks 2 and 3. So if you guys get into the rhythm of what we're doing here, throw in your predictions, anything that you're looking out for these teams and things like that. And we're gonna roll into a little solo segment from Mr. Benjamin Shoop.
Yeah, so I've had this one, a little bit for the past few weeks, kind of on the mind here. It's a pretty popular question. I think a lot of teams ask themselves is, if you could add one player from who the Bills play this year. So any of the Bills opponents this year, if you could add one player on the offensive side and the defensive side, who would you choose? There's a lot of options offensively. I think I would personally go receiver. There's a lot of good receivers the Bills play this year. Tyreek Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Marvin Harrison, who we just mentioned, Stephon Diggs, DK Metcalf. So a lot of good players there. Personally, I think I would either go DK Metcalf or Tyreek Hill, just get one of those guys that can really help stretch the field. I'd probably go with Tyreek Hill, and that just to really stretch the field, get more speed on this offense. And then defensively, you could go D-line, you could go defensive back, you could maybe go corner, safety. I'm going to go D-line. There's a lot of great defensive linemen the Bills play this year. Nick Bosa, Chris Jones, Ali McNeil, Hassan Reddick down the line if Hassan Reddick plays for the Jets. But I'm actually going to go with a little bit of maybe a wild card. I'm going to go with Matthew Judon there of the Patriots. I just think, he's put together a great career so far in New England. I know he had the injury last year, didn't play too much. So those are my two this year. Let me know down below what you guys think. Who would you add? One offensive player, one defensive player who the Bills play this year. Let me know down below. And that is my 1 minute for this week.
Yeah, really great stuff. I would definitely like to throw DK Metcalf on this roster. That's one guy during this are we going to trade for a wide receiver scenario that I really liked. And then as far as defense, and I apologize, I failed us with these banners. I left that up and that was on me, and I'll get better. I promise you. But the defensive player I'd go with is Joshua Allen Hines, because I still want both Josh Allens on the same team, and whether it's Allen Hines or not. He was a guy that looked like, I just realistically, if we were going to trade for either a pass rusher or a wide receiver, Metcalf and Joshua Allen Hines are some of the guys that I kind of looked at and thought like, okay, this would be a really good addition to the Bills roster.
Yeah, shout out to our Josh Allen for making other Josh Allen change his name. That's pretty cool. Yeah, if I had to add two, I would also go the receiver route, but I would take Deebo Samuel from the 49ers. I think he fits in really well to that kind of lineup, anywhere, gadget type of player that all of our receivers and tight ends kind of are. You can line Deebo up outside. You can bring him in the slot. You can bring him in the backfield. So I think he would fit in really well in our scheme. And then on the defensive side, I'm going Aiden Hutchinson from the Lions. Defensive end, would get after the quarterback, which is something that the Bills definitely need. And he's really young. Like, he's only had 2 years in the league. Both years been very impressive. So hopefully making that like third year bump. So I think he would fit in really well in that defensive line room.
That's a heck of a pick. Yeah. Aiden Hutchinson, definitely one of those guys, kind of the Aaron Schobel-esque type of, dominant pass rusher that doesn't necessarily have to be hurt all the time. He just goes about his business, and I really like that about him. All right, yeah, if you guys are done there, there's no comments to highlight here. We got Max Crosby or Josh Allen. I stole that from you, Bob, your Josh Allen pick there, so thank you for that. Next up on the Bills' schedule, week 2, the Miami Dolphins. Ben, I'll let you get started with this one.
Yeah, I mean, the Dolphins, we all know, right? Very familiar foe. The rivalry has kind of reignited the past few years. It's been great to see, the Dolphins getting Tua and Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, all those guys. So we'll start off right away with those top three that I just said, right? Tua, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, the focal point of their offense. Obviously, they still have other great players on their offense. Running back wise, they got A-Chain coming back. He who was a breakout player last year should be even more involved this year. But it's an interesting offense to look at. First in time to throw in the NFL at 2.33 seconds. One of the top passing offenses in the league, one of the top offenses in the league, 5th there in yards last year. So it's just a well-run offense there by Mike McDaniels over there, with a lot of timing routes, a lot of just making sure that the players are where they need to be when they need to be, right? Tua can get the ball out when he needs to get it out. It's all pretty much planned beforehand. Hey, if this isn't open, he's going here. If this isn't open, he's going here. So Miami loves their offense, and they love to really get the offense rolling and get the ball out fast. So it's going to be another test for this Bills offense or Bills defense here in week 2 against the Dolphins. We've seen them play in the past, obviously, but this, again, Bills defense is a little bit different this year. So, I mean, we'll just start off there. What do you guys think, I guess, of the Tua, Tyreek Hill, Waddle? How do you think they'll attack them? And just what do you think this year, if their offense will change at all, or do you think it will be more of the same kind of that you saw last year?
Yeah, in this game, Thursday night, so a short week for the first road game of the season, but maybe a good thing. It won't be quite as hot in Miami. That's where I was the past few days, and I can tell you it's as hot as advertised. But yeah, Tyreek Hill is the kind of player, like, you can't, you can't stop him. You can only hope to contain him, kind of thing. And I think the Bills last year did a pretty good job about that, and just kind of like letting him catch those 5-yard stops, those quick outs, those quick hitters, and then just like really gang tackling and make sure you don't let him kind of squirt loose, because if he makes the first guy miss and gets any space, like, he's gone before anybody else can get there. So yeah, just trying to contain that and kind of like not let them take the top off. Like, that's something we would see the Bills do against the Chiefs when they had Tyreek Hill. They'd play kind of that cover 2 shell, and then not let the deep stuff get open, make them kind of dink and dunk their way down the field, and eventually they're going to get frustrated and they're going to take a shot. Or Tua's going to make a mistake. He's not the most accurate quarterback in the world. So if we make him kind of make those timing throws that eventually, hopefully, one is inaccurate. And then another good thing they wanted to mention timing throws is disrupt the timing. jam him at the line, get him off of his route, get them out of their rhythm. Because when they're not getting free releases off the line, Tua looks like kind of lost. After he goes through his like first or second read, he doesn't really tend to go to a third read. He either like forces it, throws it away, or before all of his injuries would look to kind of tuck and get out of there. He can't do that anymore. So if we can disrupt that timing, jam them off the line, play physical with them. Tyreek Hill does not want to be touched. He's a track athlete who's also very good at football. But if you touch him, if you hit him, if you make him agitated, he is not the same player. So disrupt the timing, make Tua have to go through his progressions, which he is not that good at. I think they can try to contain that offense like they've done the past few seasons. And then I know we're only talking about offense, but defensive side of the ball as well. Not sure if Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips are going to play. They're coming off an ACL. They're coming off of an Achilles. And the fact that we are playing them in week 2 is a really good thing because those are two, A-list pass rushers. And if we don't have to deal with them, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I think that the key, obviously, to Tua's game is rhythm passing, making sure he's on time, on target to where he needs to go. And if you can disrupt those routes and that timing, that's the key to beating Miami. I think there's no secret to that. And it's weird because the offense is just really high ranked in every statistic, and the defense is not bad. It's top 10, top 15 in most things. But the problem is they do tend to give up a decent amount of points. They had 23 points per game given up last year, which is really the only stat that you can look at and say, wow, that's like bottom 10. And everything else, they were middle of the pack at worst and fairly solid. So overall, it's just a matter of probably situational football for them. Like we mentioned, Tua staying on time, on target, and that's easier said than done, obviously, and he proves that. So we'll see. Early season, week 2, this game is gonna be tough to contain. Hill and Waddle be fresh. We're expecting, pending any offseason injuries. We'll see how that all turns out throughout this preseason. But if they come in full health, then they're going to have explosive guys in week 2 that are at home, ready to go. And I expect it to be a very, very difficult game for Buffalo there. It won't be their home opener. It'll look like they'll open against Jacksonville at home. So they would have already had a game in front of their fans. So maybe that big first home opener game energy will be out of the stadium. But I think the first game against Buffalo is going to be a big deal for this team. So, I think we'll just I think that's pretty much what we have to say about, the guys we want to highlight, the strengths and weaknesses. I believe we kind of went through that fairly quickly for this one, which was good. And highlighting that, this is an explosive offense. We don't expect that to change this year, right? So it's a matter of scoring to match them because they do give up points, and 22nd overall in the league in points allowed per game. And we'll see how that turns out next season. Does their defense get a little bit worse? I know they had some losses and things, so we'll see how that point differential changes in 2024. And I'll just ask the question since I'm here and talking about it. If they drop this game, Ben, then because you're saying week 1 could put you at an 8. So week 2, I mean, I will say if you want to try to, if they're dropping week 1 and 2, or if you want to just say, let's say they win 1 and drop 2, what are you thinking in your mind here?
Yeah, I mean, it's early season games. Obviously, if they drop them, you never want to panic. But I think it's more not even just that if they lose the early season games. I think it's just also looking down the road at this schedule, right? The schedule, you need to win these games early. You need to get out in front in this division with a healthy Jets team or healthier Jets team. You have the Dolphins who like we said, had explosive offense last year, added to it with Odell Beckham Jr., Jonnu Smith, right? They even added to their offense this year. Defensively, we'll see obviously if Jordan Poyer can help that defense elevate and see if he still has a lot left in the tank. But it's going to be a tough one if you lose this game, especially with the division. You can't just bank on, you can't bank on Aaron Rodgers getting hurt. You can't bank on the Jets being the Jets, right? I know we say it every year, the Jets are the Jets. They somehow are going to end up being a team that misses the playoffs, but they are a very good defense. The offense should be a lot better this year. So when it comes to division in this game, if you lose this game, especially early on with, a team that necessarily doesn't have the best home field advantage in the league, it might worry me a little bit. Now, I think I would probably stay around that 7-ish range when you come in with this, especially when it comes to the division. But at the end of the day, it is week 2. I'm not going to be up in arms about it, but it will be a little bit of panic to see how they do then bounce back against Jacksonville in weeks 3, 4, and 5, because then it puts the pressure on even those games a lot more down the road. With then the Chiefs later on in the year, the Lions later on in the year. So it's not so much that I would be lose confidence and kind of just panic in the sense that, the Bills can't win games. It's, well, these other teams are very good that they are playing this year. It's a tough schedule. Even if they do play well against some of these teams, they could still lose these games. So I think this game, you got to win this game early against the Dolphins. We've seen them drop them early against the Dolphins in the past, and it's been a dogfight to win the division back, right? And we can say, the Jets are going to be the Jets, the Dolphins are going to be the Dolphins. They're somehow going to lose the division, but as we've mentioned a couple times this show, this team is a lot different for the Bills this year, whereas the Dolphins, if anything, got better on both sides of the ball this year, and the Jets as well, coming back with Aaron Rodgers. So this division is going to be a lot different this year if they can stay healthy. Obviously, it's a big if. So I'm not going to be in full panic mode if they lose even both games, but it's going to be a tough road down the line.
Yeah, before I answer that, I just want to highlight Taylor's question. What do you guys think? Over, under for Tyreek Hill? I think under, just based on, historically him with the Dolphins against the Bills.
Yeah, I'm going under as well.
Yeah, I'm going under as well. It's one of those things that, like Scott said, Bills playing well.
Yeah.
Waddle I'll go over, but Hill, I'm going to go under. Yeah,
so if the Bills win week 1 against the Cardinals and then lose this game against the Dolphins, but they look good, that they play well, it's a close game, a couple things don't go their way, whatever, I'll still be pretty confident that they'll have a good season and win the division because, a short week in Miami on the road, that they're going to have a target on the Bills going into this game. So if they can get out of the first 2 games 1-1 and look good against the Dolphins, I don't really think I'll be worried at all. Obviously, in the moments, I'm sure that I will be. But, once I take kind of a step back, I don't think I would be super nervous. But if they can go down to Miami, set the tone that, hey, the division still runs through us. Doesn't matter who we have playing receiver. You can have Jordan Poyer. We cut him anyway. Obviously, we'll miss him. But kind of show that, hey, the division still goes through Buffalo. And I think that really sets the tone for the season going forward, both momentum-wise and to the rest of the league, kind of put them on notice that, hey, the Bills are still here. We still have Josh Allen. We don't have Diggs. We don't have Gabe Davis, but nothing's changed. I think that goes a long way. And then, you mentioned some other guys that they're missing. Josh Allen's special friend, Christian Wilkins, no longer there. That's a big deal. He eats up the middle of the field and plays really well against the run. So I think James Cook could potentially have another big game here against the Dolphins, especially with the strength of their D-line either being hurt or not there anymore. So I don't know if I'd necessarily panic if they lose this game, but if they lose both games and they lose to the Cardinals, then they lose to the Dolphins, I may be dusting off that panic button to hit it sooner than later.
Yeah, it will not be a good feeling to start the season 0-2 for sure. That's where I will start having, like you mentioned, a little bit panic creeping in up towards that 7 or 8 level from the 5 I would be at week 1 at most. But again, it is based upon how they lose, how they look, And even if they lost both games, but they were competitive, and say there were some things like you mentioned didn't necessarily bounce their way somehow, and they lose by a field goal in both games or something like that, I'm not too worried. But we'll see. That's a tough thing to even think about, starting 0-2. But yeah, I wanted to just throw something in here that's not necessarily just kind of an impromptu question. How many interceptions does Josh Allen have after week 2 against Miami?
That's a good one. I'm gonna go with 2. I think he either throws 2 in one game, has 0, or he goes 1 and 1. I just, if it's over 2, then man, we better hope the national media they're gonna have a heyday. But yeah, I'm gonna go with just 2 straight up and average 1 a game.
I was also thinking 2. He usually throws 1 against Miami. Miami's secondary is solid. Hopefully he doesn't throw any, which would be pretty cool. But if they're 2-0 and he has 3 picks, or even, depending on how the interceptions are, like, I think I'm pretty okay with that. I'm sure the national media, like you said, will talk about the interceptions and then kind of has a footnote, like little asterisks, like, by the way, the Bills are 2-0. But yeah, hopefully he can limit those. But like, that's, you live and you die with Josh Allen. For every interception he throws, he makes a throw that no other quarterback in the world can make. And I don't want him to start doubting his arm. I don't want him to not make those throws. But yeah, if he could take care of the ball in the beginning of the year this year, that would be helpful. But not at the changing of who he is. Not at risking that.
Yeah, and I think maybe getting back to who he is, as far as maybe having some games where he's running the football. Last year, they kind of took that away early on and waited till later in the season to really give him a lot of rushing attempts and opportunities. And I think this offense gives him a little more opportunity to do it early and often, and just be himself throughout. So they know they can't throw away any game, and they need to be on their best A game, and that's when Josh Allen's going to run with the football. So I'm going to say 1 interception through the first 2 weeks. He's going to throw 1 against Miami, 0 versus Arizona, and he's going to have probably 4 to 6 touchdowns in those 2 games as well. So I'm looking for a 4-to-1 type ratio coming out of week 2 with Miami, and hopefully 2-0 start for the Buffalo Bills. So, yeah, I guess that was an impromptu question that just came to my head, and I wanted to get it out there. So, give me your prediction. I guess we'll start with Ben. I think we did Scott first last game. So, for week 2 against Miami, whether it's any sort of exact score or otherwise.
Yeah, I guess I'll keep the trend going of the actual score here, but I think I'm gonna go with lower scoring game. I think with the Dolphins, even though both of these offenses, even in past seasons, have been top tier offenses, for some reason that the offenses in the games that the Bills do play them, not every time the offenses go off. So I'm gonna go with like a 24 to like 17 game, 24-20 game. I guess if I go real early, these are all my real early predictions. I'll go with 24-20, with the Bills squeaking it out there. Maybe a last second touchdown, who knows? But yeah, I think it will be still a close game, but I don't think it will be a really high scoring game at all.
Vegas disagrees with you, but it's essentially a pick 'em right now. Obviously, it will change based on everything that happens between now and then. And week 1, over under is 51.5 at the moment. And Miami's a slight favorite at -1, but essentially a pick 'em. I kind of have a bad feeling that the Bills might lose this game. I think taking the new offense on the road, a little not quite as easy as it is at home. Say what you will about the Dolphins crowds, but the best crowd they've had was for that Copa America game this past week. It wasn't even the Dolphins game. But, on the road is always tougher than playing at home. So I think the Dolphins win. I think it's a close game. But I think the Dolphins eke it out. But I think we get them back at our place later in the season. But I just think week 2, they're a lot more established in their identity than we are at this point. So I think they might get us here early.
Yeah, I almost expect Miami to potentially win by a touchdown here in a competitive game. Really like Sean McDermott and his defense against Miami. That's where I think the Bills can have them. But I don't know. It's going to remain to be seen that they can beat the Bills, because we went down to their place and they had to have the game for the division and couldn't get it done. And I think that defense we took down there was not as good as the one that's going to be week 2 for the Bills. So for me, I really, if the Dolphins win, they win by a touchdown. And this early in the season, I'll be for the reasons that you stated, and having a young offense and maybe some mistakes cost us in week 2 on the road. I'll choose the Dolphins to win this game as we stand here in the preseason. All right, I think that puts us to my solo segment, so we'll throw that up. If you guys have any questions for us, throw those in the chat. We'll get to some of those after this 1 minute, and then we'll get on to Jacksonville and keep the show rolling. So go ahead and put that there, and I'll take the banner down this time. So I'm going to put my tweet in the chat here for you guys if you'd like to read a little bit more of my reasoning on why I think these guys are the key. But the 5 key players going into training camp that I have, and I want to get everyone else's 5 key players, or just give me a couple that you're looking at. But I have number 5, Keon Coleman, number 4, James Cook, number 3, Matt Milano, number 2, Dalton Kincaid, and number 1, Connor McGovern. McGovern moving to center, I think he needs to be a linchpin of the offensive line, getting that communication and chemistry going with Josh Allen. And I think their friendship off the field between McGovern and Allen's been very good, and that can help them put together a really good 2024 together as the center QB combo. So I have Connor McGovern as my top key player here heading into training camp. So let me know what you guys think. Feel free to follow the link to my X post and also comment there. But let us know who your key players are and who you think is going to make an impact here in training camp to bolster the Bills' season this year.
Yeah, I like that list. Obviously, for the Bills to be successful this season, all of those guys have to have success and have to have good seasons. Another rookie I would throw in there, because you had Keon Coleman, is I would say Cole Bishop. He has a real opportunity to win one of those starting safety positions. Mike Edwards only on a 1-year deal. If it's all things equal, do they start the rookie? Just because, we have him locked up for the next 4. And then Taylor Rapp he's locked up for 3 years, but it's not really a 3-year deal. And last year he played so well in kind of that hybrid third safety, like box linebacker kind of position. So maybe he stays in that this year where he had success last year. So I think Cole Bishop coming in as a rookie has a really good opportunity to come in and camp, make some noise, and earn a starting position on this team. And then as far as veterans go, I'm looking for Christian Benford to have a good camp. He had a great season last year, I think overshadowed because he's a 6th-round pick out of an FCS school in Villanova. So no one really knows who he is. But with Rasul Douglas being the last year of his contract, Benford has an opportunity to have a good season this year and say, hey, look, I'm your number 1 corner. You don't need to bring back Rasul Douglas. You don't need to sign another veteran. Just we can extend him after this season before he goes into year 4, and he can maybe be our number 1 corner for years going forward. So Benford, big camp for him as well.
Yeah, a lot of good names you guys put out there. I'll throw out a couple different ones as well. Greg Rousseau is one that I'm really curious to see how he comes out. Just, again, kind of like Christian Benford, who has had solid years in his career, now getting to the point where Greg Rousseau especially really needs to kind of start putting everything together. We know that he's great in the run game, but can he start to take those massive steps forward in the pass rush game? So he's one I'm going to be curious to see. AJ Epinesa on the other side as well just got paid. Can he live up to kind of a contract and getting paid there and staying in Buffalo? And then on the offense side of the ball, you mentioned Keon Coleman, Lance, but I'm also curious to see, Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel, just to see how they're going to use them. Can they step up in their kind of extended roles? And Curtis Samuel with now a quarterback that is on the top tier end for really the first time in his career. So I'm curious to see just guys, can they take those steps now with one, bigger roles, and two, just going into now those, fourth, fifth years in their career, can they start to put it together? So, I mean, a lot of guys that are really just there to look at. I mean, you guys named a bunch of great ones as well, Benford and James Cook and just Kincaid as well. So a lot of names to be looking out for. But it's an exciting time of the year to see kind of who's going to step up there, especially early on in training camp.
Yeah, definitely intrigued to see, what Milano can do to bounce back from his injury. And that's a big focal point on him. Kincaid hoping, that he's going to be that leader in targets and see how he kind of handles that sort of expectation on him. James Cook obviously being the lead back and expecting the Bills to need to lean on, his rushing ability to find that balance and success they're going to need on offense. And then for Keon Coleman, one thing I wanted to ask before we jump into week 3 here from you guys is if he does get off to a fast start and is able to integrate into this offense quite quickly, I think he could be Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think, with just the amount of targets taken away from this Bills roster, they got to go somewhere, right? And, you just drafted the guy early in the draft, your first pick of the draft. So, and you let a lot of guys slip past you just to be able to say, hey, we're fine with Keon Coleman, and let, X or A, B, C go earlier to a different team. So I definitely wouldn't be shocked. A lot of great names that will be in the running for that, but the target's got to go somewhere. Why not Keon Coleman getting them?
Yeah, he definitely has a shot at Offensive Rookie of the Year if he gets out to a hot start. But I think he would have to have like a historical season, just based on the rookie quarterbacks that are going to be there. Like, Caleb Williams is probably going to be starting. Maybe Drake May plays a little bit. I know they say they don't want to, but that rookie quarterbacks always seem to play when they're picked that high. And then a lot of good receivers, Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, guys like that. So yeah, like he definitely could be in the running. But I think he would have to have a Justin Jefferson type rookie season to be in the running for that. Which, hey, with Josh Allen as his quarterback, if he comes in and plays the way that he's showing some stuff on film that he can do, he definitely something that seems like it's a possibility. And it'll be fun to see because it's been a while since the Bills have had like a big time rookie receiver. Now, I know we drafted Gabe Davis, but he was in the 4th round. They haven't drafted, or Zay Jones was 2nd round, but he didn't really pan out the way we thought he might. But it's exciting to have that, because there's so many rookie receivers recently have kind of been like lightning in the bottle. Like it's fun to see. Like maybe the Bills found one this year.
Yeah, that's kind of unusual for wide receivers to win that award in some respects. Although 2 out of the last 3 years, Jamar Chase in 21, Garrett Wilson in 22, but before that, you go all the way back to Odell Beckham and then Percy Harvin in 2009. So not necessarily the most common thing to see a receiver win it. And without him being a high end, necessarily that focal point of the offense, I'm not necessarily predicting he's going to get it because I really think, he's going to be at his best after the Bills bye week later in the season and really help that stretch run and that playoff run for the Bills. It's where I think he's going to thrive. So I'm not necessarily sure he's going to get all the accolades early in the year as he ramps up. And I think the Bills are going to have other ideas on how they want their offense to focus on players like Samuel and Shakir and James Cook over Coleman. I just think that if he does, find lightning in a bottle quick, to start the season, you could see, he just has that ability to go off for 12, 14 touchdowns or something crazy and, do some wild stuff, because I really think he's going to be really impressive on the red zone. So that being said, let's jump into it, guys. I guess I'll start here. I kind of gave you each the floor to start on the other teams. Let's start with the Jacksonville Jaguars here, and Trevor Lawrence, obviously the quarterback of the Jaguars. You had an average time to throw at 2.54 seconds, fourth quickest in the NFL. So again, I keep bringing up time. I think we've brought it up for each quarterback. We're going to continue that because the Bills' pass rush right now is not known. The pressure that they were able to generate last year was at a fairly high rate, and they still did well in sacking the quarterback overall. But I want to see exactly how that's going to, carry over to 2024. We have AJ Epinesa back. If he's healthy and playing at a high level, where is he at? Does Greg Rousseau turn that pressure rate into more sacks? How effective does Von Miller remain in 2024, and so on and so forth? So that's why you'll hear me and kind of us, I guess, bring up that average time to throw for each of these quarterbacks they're playing, because it matters to how successful that Bills defense is going to be based upon the pressure rate they're able to obtain there. Not a crazy good NFL rating, 88.5 for quarterbacks with a minimum of 300 dropbacks. That was 20th in the NFL, so not super impressive there. They do add Gabe Davis and Mitch Morse for the sake of naming Bills players joining them. They obviously have some defenders there that are able to get home, but it's going to be very, very bittersweet seeing Gabe Davis and Mitch Morse in those Jaguar uniforms in week 3. I think for me, more Mitch Morse than Gabe necessarily, but I did meet Gabe at a couple signings and things, and I thought, he was a really consummate professional and just a no-nonsense type of player. So I hope we're not going to miss that too much. Maybe the Mac Hollins edition gives us a little of that to replace, what he gave us. But overall, it's going to be, I hope this game is going to be everything we hoped last year might have been, although the trip to London just made it sort of less than optimal. I don't think either team necessarily had their best effort out there, although you could probably say Jacksonville was pretty successful.
Yeah, the Jaguars are a team that kind of took a step back last season. Kind of the same with Trevor Lawrence. I know he dealt with quite a few injuries, but you remember 2 seasons ago, they went to the playoffs. They had that crazy comeback. They beat the Chargers. They won the playoff game. Kind of seemed to be, one of those teams with the quarterback going into the 3rd year, ready to take that jump to win 11, 12, however many games, kind of like you mentioned earlier with the Bills, like what we did when Josh Allen was young. And then they started off that way, and then they just fell off a cliff. Some of that had to do, like I mentioned, with Trevor Lawrence getting banged up. I think he hurt his ankle last season, but I'd be interested to see, do they take that step this year in year 4? Or is 9-8, 8-9, middle of the pack kind of what they are and what Trevor Lawrence is? Because last season, like you mentioned, he was 20th in quarterback rating on dropbacks. That's not good for someone who's the number 1 pick and had as much hype as he had. You would look for those numbers to be quite a bit better. They did get him some help in Gabe Davis, but they lost Calvin Ridley, who was their number 1 receiver last season. And they have Evan Ingram coming back, who's a really good tight end, had his best season as a pro last year, almost got 1,000 yards. They have Trevor Lawrence's college teammate, Travis Etienne at running back, who had a really good season last year coming off of an injury where he missed his rookie year. So is he going to have a nice 2nd/3rd year, depending on how you count the years bump? So it'd be interesting to see what this team is. They're going to have 2 games before they play us. Let me just look up and see who they're playing. They got the Dolphins and the Browns, so 2 teams that made the playoffs last year, who are 2 solid teams. So yeah, they could come in either, being 2-0 and hey, we're legit, or they could be 0-2 and it's oh man, the Jags, they're not who we thought they were going into last season or this season. So It's a big game, another primetime game, Monday night in Buffalo, which is always fun. I think it's one of those weird weeks where they do 2 Monday night games, which I don't necessarily love, but with the Bills are in one, that's all that really matters. But yeah, they're going to be looking for more out of Trevor Lawrence this season. And that's going to have to start early with the start that they have. So I think they're going to know a lot about what the Jags are by week 3, just based on how they start.
Yeah, I mean it's not a completely revamped offense, right? It's definitely tweaked, and I think they looked at last year and they saw, you had Calvin Ridley come in and not really be what maybe they thought he could be in that offense. And I think they realized that they need guys that really fit their system better than guys like Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones. And they bring in Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr., who I know a lot of Bills fans wanted him. So receiving core, it's really solid there. And I think even though you might say it got worse talent-wise, maybe at the top end at least, with Calvin Ridley being a little bit more talented than a Brian Thomas Jr. or Gabe Davis, but they got better overall as a group and especially in their scheme fit. So I think with this offense and having Mitch Morse come in as well to help the offensive line, I think it will help Trevor Lawrence. But at the end of the day, Trevor Lawrence does like to take some chances sometimes. He likes to push the ball. He likes to really show off what he can do, which can hurt them. So we'll see how much of last year maybe was it his injury? Was it really just him? It's going to be a big year for him. He's had a really weird start to his career, right? With Urban Meyer kind of throwing off the start of his career. And then, now you got Peterson there, who's won before, right? It's just kind of been a weird start to his career, as Scott even mentioned, with the big playoff game and then the letdown last year. So I'm interested to see how this offense works this year, see if they really do make major changes. And it's going to be a little bit bittersweet seeing Gabe Davis and Mitch Morse in a different uniform there, and kind of rooting against them instead of having them root for them for the Bills. But overall, I'm excited to see how this offense and especially this Bills defense matches against this offense, who has a lot of talent. They have a lot of talent across the board there. So definitely won't be easy for this Bills defense.
Yeah, and we talked a lot about skill players, but the offensive line with the addition of Mitch Morse there, obviously Brandon Scherf is a talented player at right guard. Cam Robinson, at least you think can figure some things out at left tackle there. So we'll see how that offensive line molds together as well. Looks to be fairly decent on paper, at least for the Jaguars. Their rushing offense was pretty bad, even though ETN had 1,000 yards, just yards per game, and things were towards the bottom. And obviously their defense didn't stand up, as they were 11th worst in yards per game and 7th worst in passing yards per game at 239 passing yards per game. So expect an air raid from the Bills, obviously, and I'd be remiss if I don't mention the pride of the Syracuse Orange is Andre Cisco back there at safety. So one of the guys that I'll be watching this season, see where he takes his game at the next level. I think in his year 3 or 4 season. So he's a guy at safety. I think that may be asked to do a lot for Jacksonville's defense this year on the back end, and we'll see how that all pans out. But I just see they have Ronald Darby there too, so at corner. So I think Allen hopefully can have lots of success through the air in the Week 3 game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I guess is that your question there, Ben? That is next here. I guess you can.
Yeah, before we get into that question, I guess, though, I did just want to touch on the defense and kind of just get your thoughts a little bit on the defense there. Of, you kind of said it, how last year they struggled mightily against the pass, and they kind of bring in Eric Armstead, and they still have Travon Walker there to see what he can do, and he might be one of the least talked about first round picks or first overall picks in a long time. So defensively, it's a little bit kind of a question mark there. We just talked a lot about the offense. So, I mean, do you think this is a game where the Bills offense should look at it as, hey, we should have a day we shouldn't really, it should be a 25 plus point game, and we should be able to move the ball, not necessarily every time with ease, but most of the time with ease.
Yeah, I do think so. And you mentioned Eric Armstead there. Another Bills great for about 5 minutes there this past offseason. But yeah, I think this is a game that the Bills should look to score points. They're at home. It's on Monday night after a Thursday night game. So they have kind of the mini bye. A lot of time to prepare. I know it's early, so guys should be fresh anyway, but they'll be extra fresh after 11 days off or whatever it is. And despite how poorly they played last year, they did move the ball decently well against the Jaguars in that London game with how flat they were. This Jaguars defense, I don't know if it's as good as the one was last year, but last year it wasn't very good. So, yeah, I think Josh Allen should look to have a big game because they weren't very good against the pass last season. So maybe this is another one of those games where the Bills' passing offense kind of finds some more rhythm. The Cardinals game, in theory, should be one that they do that as well. The Dolphins game will be a little bit more tougher, but in a team with a weaker secondary like the Jaguars, kind of find who you are, like see what works, like get some guys in rhythm, get some confidence going into, the middle of the season, which is kind of where you're starting to get after week 3. So yeah, I think this is definitely a game that the Bills should look to score some points. The over-under right now, obviously it'll change, is set at 49. So it sounds like Vegas thinks the Bills are going to play a lot of high-scoring shootout type games. So this should definitely be a game that the Bills offense looks to get into a rhythm to build off of going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think their defense leaves a little bit to be desired there. They obviously have Josh Hines-Allen. Interesting, I just saw they have the pair of LSU defensive tackles there, Mason Smith and Jordan Jefferson. Jordan Jefferson was a big target of mine at defensive tackle in the draft. Obviously, we end up with Dwayne Carter, which is great, and we'll see, what those two rookie defensive tackles are able to do. Expected to be backups at this point, but we'll see how they play a role in the defensive line and how much they're able to disrupt things that the Bills want to do, such as, James Cook's rushing ability or Ray Davis or whomever is toting the rock that game for the Bills. So I definitely am intrigued by their ability or inability to try to shut down this Bills passing attack. Although we're not exactly sure how the Bills passing attack is going to look come this year, but we have an idea based upon some games that Joe Brady was calling on how, we might be able to see some of these weapons that the Bills have deployed in multiple sets, formations, and being able to get the guys the ball to do some run after the catch and things. And I think we have kind of the horses in the stables here to really be able to put that plan into effect. And especially this game might be where we see it open up and we really see kind of things clicking, and maybe one of the, at least early on, one of the best games, because the schedule doesn't get easier from there, and hopefully this is one where it kind of sets our trajectory in the upward direction for the remainder of the season.
Yeah. I just want to get your thoughts there on that one, but then it kind of brings me into this last question here. We talked a little bit about Gabe Davis, Mitch Morse, and I know as Bills fans we might automatically think one thing with this question, but I kind of want to just, as NFL fans, when you're looking at this question, is this game more important for Gabe Davis and Mitch Morse, or is it more important for their replacements, for Keon Coleman, for Connor McGovern? So what do you guys think? Obviously, not super in-depth question, but just what do you guys think? A little fun little question there. Is it more important for the replacements or for them themselves?
On the surface, I think that I'm definitely going to be intrigued to see, are Connor McGovern and Josh Allen fumbling any snaps? Is there anything there with the interior or with the offensive line at all that's really out of sync, or miscommunications, things like that? I think I'm definitely going to be looking more at the replacement in the Mitch Morse situation. But I'm going to be looking at more of Gabe Davis than his replacement in this game for me. I think that I'm going to see more Mac Hollins doing some Gabe Davis type stuff in this offense too. Although you're right, Keon will be asked to do that, and others as well. I think Shakir is going to be asked to play an important role. But I think because there's not a direct replacement for Gabe Davis on the team, it's going to be replacement by committee probably, that I'm more looking to see what Gabe Davis can do in his first game back in Buffalo.
Yeah, I agree. I think, more important, I would say, for Mitch and Gabe, because at least from the Bills side, like, I don't want Keon Coleman or Matt Collins or whoever is going to replace Gabe Davis in his offense and Connor McGovern to feel like they have to replace those guys. Like, that's not necessarily the attitude you want them to have. Like, I know it's cliche, but want them to just go out there and be themselves and, like, carve out their own niche and, like, play to their best ability, not have to worry about filling the shoes of guys who may have been there, because it's a next man up kind of mentality. So I just want those guys to go out there and play their best and do what they do best and show off their strength, because it's probably different than the strength of the guys who were in there before, but they're obviously good football players. They're in the NFL. So yeah, just don't want our guys to think about who they're replacing. Just want to think about go out there, being themselves, playing to the best of their ability, showing what they can do. And then, show why the offense, now has them in it instead of the guys who may have been there in years past.
Yeah, I agree. I think especially, Mitch Morse getting older, can he continue that level of play? That's a big question, I think, for him. And then Gabe Davis, was he worth money for the Jacksonville to spend, right? And give him a couple of years there. So I agree. I think it'll be more important for Gabe and Mitch to kind of show that, hey, Bills, you made the wrong decision getting rid of both of us, instead of the other guys saying, hey, we can replace you guys, no problem. So especially, like you said, with the receiver, it's more replaced by committee rather than just replaced by one guy. So just a fun little question I had there, which kind of, I guess, gets us to our last little thing with the Jacksonville game. We did it with both the other two games with our predictions there. I am obviously doing actual scores with mine, which might be a little premature. So I'll let you guys go first there with I guess, Scott. What do you got for your prediction for this game?
So the Bills are, as of now, favored by 5 points in this game. I think the Bills win this game. I'm not sure if they cover that 5, though. That's kind of one of those no man's land spreads. So I think the Bills win, but I do think it's a good game because both teams are coming off big games the week before. The Bills with the Dolphins, the Jaguars with the Browns. So both teams I would imagine both teams see this as a game that they need to win in the conference if they, want to get the 1 seed going down the line, which both these teams, will at least think they're playing for going into the season. So I think the Bills win, but I think it's a close one.
I don't think it's going to be close. I think the Bills will have something have happened in the first 2 weeks that kind of bring them into this game in a Monday night situation, looking at a defense that they think they can take advantage of in multiple ways. And I think they come out and execute. All the early season jitter should be gone. You've gotten 2 games under your belt now. And I expect this, like I was mentioning, just to be that game where things are clicking, things are starting to point us towards that upward trajectory. Whether we're 2-0 coming to this or 0-2, the Bills, I think, are going to set the tone early and often in this game and score some points. So I think I expect them to win. I think they can neutralize the offense of the Jaguars enough. The Jaguars probably have a bad taste in the Bills' mouth from last year. Some of these guys, you're going to have Matt Milano going back up against the Jaguars after his injury in that game, Daquan Jones as well. I think that some guys are going to be really fired up to kind of, not saying they're going to want to exact any revenge because, that last year's team was different, but, especially going up with Morse and Gabe in this game, they're going to want this game, especially to best those guys in a friendly competition type of way, I think.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess we're all over the place with this game. Scott had a close Bills win. Lance had more of a not lopsided, but just a handily win for them. I went Cardinals, kind of pretty good win there, handled them well. I went with a close win against the Dolphins. I'm going with a close loss this week to the Jags. My score prediction, I guess, early one again, since I'm just doing them here, would be 34-28. So a little bit high scoring game there. I just think something about Jacksonville having the Bills just with weird games, not necessarily having their number. It's just there's always kind of interesting games between the Jags and the Bills. So I do think it will be kind of a little bit of a shootout there. I expect this Jags offense to at least be better when it comes to their continuity this year, as the Bills, I think, also will still be up there. So I think it'll be a good game. I think it will be kind of back and forth, but I'm going to go with the tough Bills loss here to go to 2-1, which I believe that puts all of us at 2-1 after the first 3 games. So yeah, we're all kind of thinking 2-1 there in that range with this. But yeah, I think this is the game they lose to Jacksonville.
Yeah, and I think if the Bills go 2-1 through the first 3, I think they're in a really good spot going forward. Would love it if the Dolphins game was one of those wins just in the division, but I think we'd all sign up for a 2-1 start. Obviously, 3-0 would be better, but 2-1 with I'd say maybe 6.5, 7 out of 10 difficulty to start the season. I'd say we all sign up for 2-1.
Yeah, I agree. But I believe that does bring us to the last little solo segment we have here for Scott. And to finish us off here, since we're at the last game. So, Scott, it is all you.
Sweet. Yeah. So with training camp right around the corner, wanted to ask everybody, what position battle are you most excited about seeing as we go into training camp? There may not be a whole lot of straight up position battles, but we definitely have one at center. Connor McGovern penciled in there to be that starting center, but we drafted Cedric Von Granger in the 5th round, and he was a very good center at Georgia in college. So could he give McGovern a run for his money? And then kind of leaning into that, maybe another battle at left guard. David Edwards, we just re-signed him, probably penciled in there to be the starter. But if Von Granger wins the center battle, does McGovern slide back into left guard? Von Granger can even play some left guard. Then we got Alec Anderson in there as well. So a lot of position battles on that offensive line, which kind of last year we didn't have any of. And then that 4th safety spot, Cam Lewis, Damar Hamlin, that'll definitely be one that gets some media attention given Damar Hamlin and his history. And then some of you sickos are probably even excited about the punter battle. Sam Martin versus Jack Browning, something there. And then, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 6. Is the Bills offense going to have a real wide receiver 1? And if they do, who's it going to be? And then that last receiver, Chase Claypool, obviously a polarizing name there to be that 6th receiver going up against guys like Justin Shorter, who were here last year, but they were hurt. So going to be a lot of interesting position battles, but wanted to hear from you guys and from everybody in the chat. What are you most excited to see going into camp as far as position battles go?
I just want to let it be known, Scott, I am one of those sickos that is excited for the punter battle, but that's not my number one that I'm most excited for. Actually, I will say the number one that I am most excited for is one that you didn't list, which isn't really one that's talked about maybe as much because it might not be a battle for who's going to make the team. It might just be who's going to get more playing time, and that's the edge rushing battle. I think, you have so many guys there. You have Epinesa and Greg Rousseau that we've talked about. They should be the guys to step up and be the guys that make the big plays constantly. But you still have Von Miller then coming back saying he shouldn't even have played last year. A lot of guys say that he might be a little bit different this year. But even, you do have Javon Solomon coming in, Casey Toohill, Dwan Smoot. What do they do? Kingsley Jonathan, can he squeak his way onto the roster? So not really, I guess, a battle for a specific one, like, starting defense right end or starting left end or starting, whatever. It's more just the overall grouping that I'm excited to see who can set themselves apart, who can get more snaps, and who can ultimately maybe even push for a roster spot. So I'm going to go with the edge rushers there as my position battle that I'm most excited for. But I will also say, yes, I am one of those sickos that is excited to see if Jack Browning can take down Sam Martin there in the punting battle.
Yeah, I definitely want to see that. I'm kind of hoping for that. I really wouldn't mind a change, in the punting department. I haven't been overly impressed and we'll see if that helps Tyler Bass at all as well with any holding. The offensive line, the way this is going to shape out, I'm not sure that any of the starting positions are really up for grabs necessarily. I know like left guard is a little bit unknown. We assume David Edwards has it, and we'll see. The center position is Connor McGovern's. I don't see that changing. I was kind of maybe up in the air earlier in the offseason, but I think what I've seen and heard and read, I really don't think there's much competition at center unless there's just no other option at left guard other than to move Connor McGovern, and they're comfortable enough with Clapper, Van Prang, Ranger sliding in there. But I got to think that one of the guys outside of Connor McGovern is going to be able to play left guard effectively enough to have the Bills set up. It's more of these backup depth positions. Who are they actually going to keep? Just a bunch of depth here. Is Richard Garage going to come and take that practice squad path that these other guys have taken, like Alec Anderson and Ryan Vandemark, where he's going to, he's kind of in that season now to come up and be there for position on this Bills roster. We'll see if that ends up happening. That's really interesting. And then I guess battle for position has to be what's going to happen in the safety department. I just want to know, like, is Cole Bishop going to win that starting job? Mike Edwards has kind of been like a third safety type of guy. Is he going to be the starter now? Where are they going to be with that? And then who is going to really be that fourth outside cornerback? Player of note when you talk about this is just, will Daquan Hardy kind of push for return roles and be that backup to Teron Johnson with any effectiveness? So I want to see kind of his, not necessarily a battle, but his role and how he might be able to stake a claim for a roster spot with the Bills.
Yeah, there's a lot of depth positions there, like you mentioned, and it's kind of a good spot to be in. Most of the starting spots are pretty locked up with incumbents or guys that were signed to be a starter. So I think the Bills roster is in a pretty good spot, but those position battles that we do have are going to be even more important because it's for guys making the team. And if you're a good team like the Bills are, that's what you want. You don't want to have a lot of question marks of who's going to start where. You want it to be kind of those more depth spots on the roster. And the fact that we got a lot of guys who think they can make this team or probably would make other teams, I think just shows the depth of a roster that Brandon Beane has built here. May not have the top end talent, household name guys like we mentioned earlier, but like we're 2, 3, 4 guys deep at almost every position, which down the stretch when guys are banged up is what's really going to help them win football games.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be a fun and interesting camp. And I did stay true to my way too early record prediction so far, and I had to go back and look that up. I did have on May 15th the Bills winning week 1, dropping to Miami week 2, and beating Jacksonville week 3. So I did stay true to my thinking from back in May. So I'm happy for that. We're going to continue this series, like I said, for the next few weeks, even into the preseason a little bit, and we'll sprinkle in as we get more efficient with our matchup breakdowns. I'd say over the next couple of weeks, we'll still sprinkle in all the current news, current thoughts, what's going on in camp and things like that. And, if we need to be on for an hour and a half, we'll be on for an hour and a half with you guys. And we appreciate everyone sticking around. Almost 300 viewers live right now. Like to start getting some more comments in. Like to, if you guys can be a little more active, let us know what you're thinking. I definitely am intrigued to know, what our viewers are thinking about our takes or about our topics and things like that. So please encourage you to be active in the chats. I will say, please check out Built in Buffalo's YouTube channel and subscribe there for us. Share and repost this if you're on X. and like. And then on Facebook, please, you have to kind of back out of the live view on Facebook and hit the like on the post to get that like to show up for us. I'm learning Facebook's mobile interface is kind of making it harder to get the likes, I think. But we do appreciate all the people that have tuned in and everyone who supports Built in Buffalo. We are now in partnership with Monster Energy, the official energy partner of Built in Buffalo. As you can see, excited to roll out some things with them. We're going to have a really cool series of different giveaways and cool things coming up. So stay tuned for all that. Make sure you're checking out the Founders Pod tomorrow night, Red Zone Report on Sunday, Buffalo Against the World on Monday, Twitter Spaces on the Built in Buffalo account on Tuesdays. Still looking for a live show that may fill out our schedule there. And then going deep on Wednesday with Kevin Massari and Kevin Syracuse, as well as the Hoof podcast on Thursdays. We'll be back next Friday with weeks 4, 5, and 6 for everyone. And I'm excited to break down those matchups, as well as getting into the first week of training camp and what we've seen over the first couple of days. So be a really packed episode. It's going to be a lot of fun, I think, to talk with you guys. So thank you again. And with that, I will say, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.